Tali, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I want to ask you, who was Jesus for you before and who is Jesus for you now?
I really love this question, and I've been trying to give it some thought the past few days. And, for a lot of people who grew up in a home where their parents shared their faith with them and raised them to believe, the same thing, I think it's possible that as a child or a very young person that you can um, have a basic understanding and say that, yes, I want to live for God, I want to worship Him, and I want Him to be Lord of my life. Um, but things change as you grow up. I'll speak in the first person. Things changed for me as I grew up, and I had a season of not walking with the Lord, a season of rebellion. And so I think that truly Jesus became real to me after I had a season of living for myself and doing the things that I wanted to do. And as scripture says, what was right in my own eyes. And God really allowed me to get sick of that lifestyle. He just gave me this dissatisfaction. And that's sometimes just what I pray for other people that I know that I'm praying for the Lord to work in their heart. Just a dissatisfaction with what the world has to offer. So, and lately, it's just kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but lately I'm learning more about who Jesus is in terms of his compassion. That I feel like when there's seasons of trials and suffering and things are difficult and the answer that you're waiting for seems like it's wait and keep waiting and keep pursuing me and keep waiting. Um, I feel like lately I'm learning a lot about how compassionate Yeshua is, and especially I've been watching the series called The Chosen, and that has just, I've already like experienced the love of God in my life, but this has really like done something different for me recently that I just am brought to my knees, literally, and sometimes just figuratively, just like broken, and I think to myself, yes, he does care. He's not just letting you wait or letting you endure or letting things stay as they are in the earthly sense, because he's, just crossing his arms or, being frustrated. Like, no, there is such an abundance, endless compassion and love for humans, for his creation, for us as his children. So I hope that answers your question.
And how was your encounter with Jesus? Like, how did you get your first Bible and how did you share with your family?
Mm-hmm. Well, I grew up in a home where, so my mom's side is Jewish and my dad is not Jewish, but they both, by the time I was born, they both knew Jesus and were walking with him. And so I was raised in a Jewish believing home. Many people use the term messianic. I don't always use that term because it is sometimes misunderstood, or it's sometimes just unfamiliar to people. So I just say I grew up in a home where we're Jewish. We keep Shabbat. We celebrate the holidays. I grew up going to synagogue, but we believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And so I probably had my first, scriptures when I was really quite young, because I know that I had an encounter with him when I was very young. And it was never, an issue. There was sometimes a little bit of conflict with my Jewish grandma, but I think that she didn't want to lose me in terms of like the relationship. She didn't want to shut me out of her life, but there was definitely, I can remember a few moments, even when like I was in junior high, where she would say things to me and I would just say, no, that's not right, Grandma. Like, that's not, what I believe, or no, I'm not just saying this because my parents told me to. So I can remember some of those moments, but there was no conflict, with my parents, because that's what they were hoping for.
Your mother
Yeah.
was the first one to accept Jesus?
Yes, my mom was, and then I think a little bit later, one of her sisters, one of my aunts, came to know the Lord. I don't know for sure what happened with my grandparents in terms of if they ever, surrendered their life and came to know God before they died. It's, difficult just because, they weren't speaking a whole lot, like in terms of their health at the very end, but there was definitely, like a softness in my grandpa. There was definitely some things that changed for him towards the end of his life. And I have hope for both of them, but this side of heaven, I don't know for sure. Yeah.
And how did you see the Jewish community? You share about the holidays, the Jewish holidays. How did you see this growing up as a Jewish in the middle of the scriptures as a Christian too?
Yeah. Yeah. There have definitely been moments where, it's been challenging to engage with the wider secular Jewish community. And I've always had a burden to want to share my faith with my brothers and sisters, but I've always, except for one encounter, which I'll tell you about, um, I've been met with kind of, a little bit of conflict, or sometimes just rudeness, sometimes just a flat out rudeness. Now, my husband, who is not Jewish, if he shares with a Jewish person, it's almost like God has ordained, and we know of many, many, many instances where a non-Jewish person, a Gentile, has been able to share with Jewish friends and family, and they're just, totally accepting and like open to it. So it's just interesting how that happens. The story that I'm thinking of is very early on in our marriage. Literally, I think we'd been married 3 months. We went on an outreach trip with a group called Chosen People Ministries. So we were doing street evangelism on the streets of New York, very classic. And my husband was really very helpful in encouraging me, in this, because it wasn't like my natural thing to do. Some people that comes very naturally for, and others it's not. And so one of the things that like we were asking people is if they had ever read Isaiah 53. And I remember asking this one girl on this corner, hey, have you ever read Isaiah 53? And she just turned to me and she said, not yet. I'm almost there. I've been working my way through all of the Hebrew scriptures and I'm almost at Isaiah 53. And I just went, oh, wow, tell me more about that. And we had a very wonderful conversation, and it turned out that she has the same name as me. And so it was even more, special. And we were just able to encourage her to keep going with, reading the Hebrew scriptures, but, explain like what Isaiah 53 prophesied and how that is fulfilled in Jesus. And, if she had any questions, like, this was just like a street encounter. So I was like, okay, if you have any questions, like, here's how you can reach us. So, yeah.
I think this is the best encouragement, because sometimes as a Jew, we are afraid to open the New Testament. But if we just open the Old Testament, we can see Jesus. We can understand about Jesus.
Yeah.
So, and would you like to leave a message for the Jewish people and to the church too? And one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit with you here is because living here in the United States, I'm seeing the numbers of anti-Semitism growing a lot. And I'm not used to listen to Christians speak about it and know about it, what anti-Semitism is. And how you think the church needs to react and be united to the Jews on this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I will say that I do agree that we, of course, are seeing a rise of anti-Semitism, which is very difficult to see and acknowledge. But it personally doesn't surprise me. It still is very hard to see, but it doesn't surprise me because I don't think that anti-Semitism is really going to end until the Lord comes back. I've heard of a book called The Devil That Never Dies. And that's exactly what it is. Now, that does not mean that we should be complacent or accepting or just sit back.
Yeah.
And really, the church has an opportunity, a very beautiful opportunity, to partner with and come alongside the Jewish community, whether that be in their local context or in a broader way. Whether that be like your local congregation, literally like the leaders going and meeting the other leaders and finding out how they can be a friend to them, or something like, more broad, partnering with Jewish organizations, from around the world, or Israeli organizations. I think that both the King's University, where I worked for a little over 6 years, there's a lot of great resources. Like if you really want to take a deep dive in and, study and learn, there's a degree there called, let's see, I've been out of the position for a while. Let's see, it's a Master's of Practical Theology in Anti-Semitism and Jewish Advocacy. I may have flipped that around somewhere, but there are, places like the King's University that are really intent on equipping Christian leaders to study the history, but also how can we take action. There was something else I was going to say, and now I've lost my train of thought on that. Well, if it comes back, I'll let you know, but
It's okay.
Yeah, just, like there's education, but there's also, prayer is super important, and coming before the Lord in worship. It really is something that we've seen in history, what can happen when you do become a friend of Israel and the Jewish people, and when Christians have chosen not to. And then, of course, like another excellent resource, that's what it was. Another excellent resource is with our friends at the Gateway Center for Israel, which is an extension of Gateway Church. But that is a very, specific place where churches can go to learn if they're, need a basic understanding or something more broad sweeping, and they want to really get plugged in with action.
Okay, thank you so much, Tali. It was a special time with you. Thank you. Guys, thank you for watching. Share this video with all your friends. Thank you.
Thank you.